The Galactic Concord was a council of over 100 intelligent species, some aquatic, some silicon-based, some with minds that operated in quantum states, but all bound by a delicate peace forged over centuries of negotiation. The Concord valued balance and control and above all else transparency. That was why humanity made them uneasy. Humans had joined the Concord only 80 years ago, barely a blink in galactic terms. Yet unlike most new species, they hadn't arrived in desperation or need. Instead, humanity entered the galactic stage with quiet confidence, a small delegation and carefully chosen words. They shared just enough technology to gain trust, offered moderate fleets for defense pacts, and asked very little in return. But despite their surface-level cooperation, one thing remained clear to the elder races. Humanity was hiding something. Now, with border skirmishes escalating between the Concord and an expanding warlord faction known as the Kravari Ascendancy, a full summit had been called. Delegates gathered in the Helix Citadel, a floating fortress built from crystallized dark matter orbiting a pulsar. There, beneath a dome of starlight simulations, tensions simmered, as representatives from the Zokthal Dominion accused the Terrans of withholding intelligence. Ambassador Kael Vorin stood calmly at the center of the council chamber, tall, pale, and unnervingly calm. Vorin listened to the barrage of questions about unexplained energy signatures pulsing near Sol, ancient comm logs referencing null suppression protocols, and most recently, the mysterious disappearance of a Concord scout ship near the Oort region. "We have nothing to hide," Vorin said, his voice smooth but firm. "The systems in question are under Terran control. We investigate anomalies as needed." The room bristled with distrust. The Varnathi delegate, a translucent-skinned being of living crystal, leaned forward. "Your fleet, Vorin. The humans show numbers far too low for your planetary capacity. Where are your true warships?" Vorin smiled, too knowingly. "You mistake our silence for weakness," he said. "Humanity has never needed to display force to justify its existence. We clean our own house." That phrase, "we clean our own house," set off alarms across the chamber. It wasn't a denial. It was a message. As the summit broke into smaller, urgent discussions, news arrived. A Varnathi scout ship had breached deep space boundaries near Sol and vanished. Its last transmission showed something impossible, an immense silhouette drifting beyond Neptune, dwarfed even by Earth's largest stations. Whatever it was, it moved, and it bore markings no known database could translate, except one. In ancient Terran high script etched along the side of the hull were the words, "Primarch-class Oath-sworn vessel 01. The summit erupted. Threats, demands, speculation. Was this a relic? A hoax? Or something far worse? In a private chamber, Vorin spoke to an unseen figure through a secure quantum link. "They've seen it," he murmured. A distorted voice responded. "Then it begins." As the council debated humanity's honesty, none of them realized a deeper truth. Humanity hadn't been preparing for war against the Concord. They had been preparing for something else entirely. And the ancient fleet, older than empires, older than Concord itself, was just beginning to wake. The Varnathi scout ship Sarakal had been launched in secret, in violation of Concord protocols, under the belief that humanity was bluffing. The Council's suspicions after the summit had reached a boiling point. If humans truly possessed ancient warships hidden in the Sol system, the implications were galactic in scale, and deeply unsettling. The Sarakal never returned. Its last data burst was fragmented, but chilling. A vast structure, black as obsidian, and covered in strange glowing glyphs had emerged from the edge of the Oort cloud. Not from warp, not from hyperspace. It had simply been there, dormant, cloaked in a field so advanced that even Varnathi quantum sensors had missed it. The ship dwarfed even the largest Concord dreadnoughts. The Varnathi on board identified it as non-functional, but as their scans intensified, the ship's ancient systems activated. One by one, lines of golden light traced across its hull like veins coming back to life. The ship's internal core flared, and then the transmission cut off. When Concord investigators reviewed the footage, they were stunned. The vessel bore no resemblance to modern human ships. It was angular, brutalist, and terrifying in its stillness. It lacked ports in the conventional sense, but energy readings suggested the entire structure could bend local gravity wells at will. Its name, when translated from Terran High Script, read, Oblivion-class war relic Obsidian Saint. Many assumed it was some ancient, long-abandoned Terran relic. But several facts didn't add up. The energy signature it emitted during its awakening was far beyond what any Concord civilization could produce. Moreover, the vessel hadn't just powered on. It had scanned the scout ship. It had recognized it as alien, and then it had neutralized it without leaving a trace. Within days, other deep space anomalies flared, long dormant satellites, hidden, in orbits around Neptune, Uranus, and even the Sun itself, began to broadcast encrypted pulses in ancient Terran code. Silent moons lit up with signal arrays. Then came the second revelation. A trio of long-dead asteroids near Jupiter cracked open, revealing dry docks. Inside them slept other black-armored warships, each etched with names no one had heard in recorded history. Primarch Resurgence, Crucible of Dawn, Vigilant Ascendant, and each one was moving. The galaxy reeled. The Conquered demanded answers. The humans remained silent. Earth's planetary defenses came online for the first time in over a century. Orbital yards above Mars shut down all foreign access. The moon's dark side, long thought uninhabited, began emitting impossible bursts of gravitational data, suggesting the presence of something buried, something alive. In quiet research chambers, Conquered, historians scrambled to reanalyze old records. A Vocari archivist discovered something chilling. References to a pre-Conquered war against a species known as the Null, and a terrible alliance forged in desperation by an unknown race that vanished after the battle. That unknown race bore the genetic and linguistic fingerprints of early Terrans. The signs were undeniable. Humanity had not just hidden ships. They had buried an entire epoch of galactic history beneath the ice, rock, and silence of their home system. As a Concord fleet approached the Sol boundary to investigate further, the Obsidian Saint activated fully. It did not fire a warning shot. It simply transmitted one phrase in pristine galactic standard, "Leave." And then it vanished from sensors entirely, still there but undetectable. The galaxy had called humanity's bluff. And now, it realized humanity had never been bluffing at all. The activation of the Obsidian Saint and the sudden reawakening of ancient Terran satellites sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Every major species in the Galactic Concord scrambled to make sense of what had just occurred. What was humanity hiding? Why had they kept these titanic relics secret? And more importantly, what were they preparing for? Amid the galaxy-wide panic, Earth finally spoke. Ambassador Cale Voran addressed the Concord again, this time via an untraceable quantum relay, his image flickering before the gathered representatives in the Helix Citadel. He looked tired, grave, and utterly without apology. "It is time we lifted the veil," he began. "There are truths buried in the dark that were never meant to be forgotten. We are not what you believe us to be. Not anymore." The transmission cut to a live feed from deep within the Sol system. Saturn's orbit shimmered with cloaked structures revealing themselves, monolithic rings of metal and black glass. The cold archive, Voran explained, was a Terran defense cradle, a massive, forgotten vault containing fragments of humanity's first empire. A civilization so ancient, its records were etched in psionic memory crystals, and its leaders spoke across time using quantum echoes. These weren't merely old warships. These were custodian-class vessels built not just for conquest but for containment. Humanity had once ruled thousands of systems, Voran explained. But during that time, they encountered something so catastrophic that it forced them to abandon expansion erase their empire's memory from the stars, and vanish behind a wall of silence. The Custodian Order, humans genetically modified for hyperlongevity and neural discipline, had remained behind, sworn to a singular task. Watch. Wait. Never wake the old machines unless the enemy returned. For 10,000 years they had waited, and now, signs of the ancient foe were stirring again. The Concord watched in stunned silence as the archive gates fully opened. Dozens of enormous hangars emerged from Titan's surface. Warships, still pristine, floated upward under their own power, each one displaying hull markings the galaxy had never seen. Using mathematical glyphs instead of language, Vorin confirmed what they all feared. Humanity's hidden fleet had been built not to dominate the galaxy, but to survive its greatest predator. He added a final warning. We kept our peace not out of submission, but out of memory. You feared. We were preparing for war with you. The truth is far worse. We were preparing for something only we remember, something we hoped we would never have to face again. Panic spread across conquered space. Some species demanded immediate disarmament of Earth. Others called for alliance. A few, the wiser, older ones, simply stayed silent, remembering faint myths and fractured data about a species that once turned black holes into weapons and erased entire timelines to trap an enemy in a temporal prison. In hidden chambers of their own, the custodians began to awaken, pale-skinned, ageless humans with eyes like collapsing stars. They emerged from cryogenic vaults and stepped into command chairs designed millennia ago. Without fanfare, they issued their first collective command in over 10,000 years: begin protocol nullfire. Across the Sol system, ancient war forms hummed to life. The cold archive was no longer sleeping, and whatever it had been built to hold back was stirring once more. The revelation of humanity's hidden fleet, warships that dwarfed entire planets and were as ancient as the earliest known empires, sent shockwaves through the galactic concord. Fear and suspicion turned quickly into panic. Many factions within the Concord were unwilling to wait for explanations or peaceful negotiations. They saw the awakening of the Terran custodian fleet as a direct threat, an assertion that humanity intended to reclaim dominance by force. In secret, a coalition of Concord species formed a strike force, a fleet of dreadnoughts, cruisers, and stealth vessels, led by the Varnathi warlord Vareth Kalu. Their mission was clear: destroy the Terran warships before they could fully awaken and become operational. As the Concord fleet slipped through the outer Sol system's defenses, they encountered a calm eeriness. The massive custodian warships floated silently in orbit, their black hulls etched with arcane glyphs glowing faintly in the void. Sensors indicated power was still ramping up in some vessels, but the majority seemed dormant. The Concord commanders believed they had the advantage: strike first and eliminate the threat before it could retaliate. But the Concord had severely underestimated the custodian fleet. As the attack commenced, automated defense satellites hidden in the asteroid belt exploded to life. They unleashed volleys of particle beams and gravitational disruptors that tore through Concord missile volleys and fighter swarms. What seemed like a passive defense grid was, in truth, an ancient and sophisticated system of interdiction designed to neutralize any incursion. Suddenly, the largest custodian warship, known as the Obsidian Saint, awoke fully. Its massive bulk shifted in space, and the dormant energy weapons along its hull flared to life. But rather than opening fire indiscriminately, the Obsidian Saint unleashed a pulse wave of quantum disruption that disabled Concord ships' sensors and weapon systems, without destroying them. Then, with chilling precision, the Obsidian Saint targeted the Varnathi flagship. Without crossing into faster-than-light speeds, it sent focused gravitational waves and energy discharges that crushed the flagship's hull like paper, reducing it to debris in moments. The rest of the conquered fleet watched helplessly as their command ship was obliterated without a single conventional shot fired. In the silence that followed, a message resonated throughout conquered space. The voice was ancient, calm, and unnervingly human. Return to your masters. This was mercy. The message was clear. Humanity was not here to conquer, but to warn. Panic spread across the conquered. The ancient custodian fleet was not only real, it was fully operational and deadly beyond comprehension. The mythic warships were not relics of a bygone era, but living weapons, ready to enforce a peace the galaxy had never seen before. Diplomatic channels reopened, but this time, the tone was different. The other species knew they were dealing with something far older and more dangerous than they had imagined. Humanity had waited for millennia, silent and patient, to reveal its true strength. And now, the galaxy understood that to provoke humanity was to invite destruction on a scale never before witnessed. Meanwhile, Earth's custodians prepared for a threat even greater than the conquered's suspicion. The ancient fleet was not designed for conquest but for survival, and soon the true enemy that had forced humanity's silence would emerge from the shadows. As the conquered fleets retreated, battered and broken, Ambassador Voron's voice echoed across all comms channels. "We do not seek war with you. We seek to survive. And we ask for your understanding when the day comes, you must stand with us." The galaxy had been shaken awake. Humanity's hidden fleet was no myth. It was the beginning of a new era. For millennia, humanity's secret custodian fleet had waited silently in the shadows of the Sol system, guarding a truth so dark that it was erased from the galaxy's collective memory. The ancient warships, older than any empire in the conquered, were not only weapons, they were sentinels designed to protect against an ancient, near-mythical adversary. Now, after centuries of uneasy peace, that adversary was finally stirring once more. Reports began trickling in from the outer edges of explored space. Mining colonies near the Velcor Rift, a dangerous warp storm region, started vanishing without trace. Communication satellites went dark. Reconnaissance drones sent to investigate reported warped space distortions, inexplicable energy fluctuations, and glimpses of monstrous forms larger than any known starship. Galactic historians and strategists pored over ancient texts and fragments. From deep archives, they discovered references to the Null, a terrifying species believed to be extinct. The Null were more than just biological entities. They were a hive-mind intelligence, capable of erasing entire star systems from existence by unraveling the fabric of spacetime itself. Long ago, they had nearly wiped out early Terran civilizations, forcing humanity to retreat and hide their legacy in the cold archive. Ambassador Kale Voron addressed the Galactic Concord once again, his tone grave but resolute. "The enemy we feared has returned. Our hidden fleet was not built to fight each other but to hold back the Null's advance. This is a call not only for cooperation but for survival." At first, many conquered species reacted with disbelief and fear. Could this nightmare truly exist? Were the ancient tales of the Null real? Yet, undeniable evidence continued to mount. The Null's signature, a twisting, shadowy distortion in spacetime, was detected near several key trade routes and outposts. Their attacks were swift and devastating, bypassing shields and defenses with seemingly no physical presence. Human custodians, now fully awakened, coordinated rapid defensive maneuvers across the Sol system and sent warning messages to neighboring systems. Advanced sensor arrays captured fleeting glimpses of Null vessels, organic-looking behemoths that seemed to flicker in and out of reality. These ships were unlike anything in the Concord's archives, a mix of flesh and dark energy, able to corrupt and consume matter on contact. The Concord, shaken by the failure of their strike against humanity's fleet, began re-evaluating their stance. Urgent summits were held, and tentative alliances formed. The realization dawned that humanity's centuries of secrecy had been a desperate measure to prepare for a war that now threatened every species. On Earth, the custodians convened in their ancient halls beneath the surface. The leaders, ageless and burdened by millennia of watchfulness, prepared to lead the first strike against the Null. Their plans were detailed, involving not just overwhelming firepower, but use of temporal disruption technology designed to trap or slow the Null's advance through time itself. Meanwhile, Humanity's hidden fleet moved from passive defense to active engagement. The colossal warships emerged from their hiding places in the outer solar system, forming battle lines that stretched across millions of kilometers. Concord forces, now allied with Terran custodians, began to push outward, aiming to intercept the Null before they could reach inhabited space. Yet, even with this newfound alliance, the threat of the Null cast a long shadow. The enemy was relentless, adapting quickly to attacks and spreading fear with every encounter. Old grudges and suspicions lingered among Concord members, but survival demanded unity. As the first true battle against the Null loomed on the horizon, humanity's darkest secret was now a beacon of hope for the galaxy. Their ancient warships, silent guardians of a forgotten age, were ready to fight not for conquest, but for the survival of all life. The galaxy held its breath. The forgotten enemy had returned, and the war for existence was about to begin. The galaxy had never been more fractured, but the arrival of the Null, the ancient enemy that once nearly erased humanity, changed everything. The terrifying power of the Null forced every faction, every species to confront a harsh reality. Survival required unity. After centuries of distrust, secrecy, and Cold War brinkmanship, the Galactic Concord stood at a crossroads. The revelation of humanity's hidden fleet had initially been met with shock and fear, but now it became the cornerstone of a fragile alliance. The custodians, ageless sentinels who carried the knowledge and technology of a lost empire, led the charge in forging this new unity. The Cold Archive's warships, massive and foreboding, formed a shield wall around the Sol system, protecting Earth and nearby colonies from Null incursions. Meanwhile, the Concord's own fleets, smaller but nimble, manned the outer defense perimeters, buying time and intelligence for humanity's ancient war machines. Diplomatic envoys from every major species convened in the reactivated Helix, Citadel. Old grievances were put aside, replaced by a shared urgency. The custodians shared long-hidden technology, quantum shields, temporal stasis fields, and weapons capable of disrupting the Null's bioenergetic forms. In exchange, the Concord pledged full cooperation and access to their own deep space sensor networks. Together, the Alliance coordinated a multi-front campaign against the Null. Using a combination of temporal traps and coordinated strikes, the custodian fleet engaged the Null in space-time fractures, slowing their advance and inflicting critical damage. However, the Null were adaptive and relentless, able to morph their bioenergetic forms to resist many of the new technologies. The battles were brutal and costly. Entire fleets vanished in moments. Entire star systems fell into shadow. But hope endured because of the Alliance. The galaxy's disparate species fought side by side for the first time, learning to trust humanity's ancient custodians and their fearsome legacy. On Earth, the custodians watched the tides of battle with cold precision. They had borne the burden of secrecy for millennia, and now they faced the ultimate test of their long watch. The youngest among them, once skeptical of working with the new humans and alien species, came to understand that survival depended on collective strength and shared knowledge. Amid the chaos, human ingenuity and adaptability shone through. Pilots from all corners of the galaxy trained together, using hybrid tactics blending Concord technology and custodian heritage. Scientists and engineers collaborated on emergency repairs and innovative weapons, proving that the ancient fleet was not just a relic but a living, evolving force. As the Null's advance slowed, a beacon of hope emerged. The custodians uncovered a weakness in the Null's hive mind, a vulnerability in their temporal coherence that could be exploited to sever their connection to the dark energy that powered them. A bold plan was devised, a coordinated strike, deep into Null space to deliver a crippling blow that might end the war. The campaign's final phase began with a massive fleet, Terran custodians, Concord dreadnoughts, and allied ships jumping into Null territory. The battle was fierce, pushing all involved to the brink of exhaustion. But at the crucial moment, the custodians unleashed the temporal disruption device, fracturing the Null hive mind and scattering their forces. The Null retreated into the dark corners of space, their return uncertain but delayed. Victory was hard won, but it forged a new era for the galaxy. The dawn of unity had arrived. The once fractured species now stood as guardians of a shared future, united not by fear or conquest, but by the understanding that some threats transcended all boundaries. Humanity's hidden fleet was no longer a secret or a threat. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and a galaxy reborn.